Hello, everyone, and welcome to another episode of Unscripted and Unchained RPG Review. I am Loremaster Bloodworth, and as you can see by the graphics, today's video I am going to be taking a look at the One Ring. This is, in fact, the second edition of the One Ring, and I originally picked this up, surprisingly, almost 2 years ago, and or at least that's what my box opening had said. Was that video was 2 years ago, and I'm just getting back to it now, and the reason for that return to this game system that has been sitting on my shelf for so long without me really digging into it is that I have been recently watching a lot of YouTube channels for the Lord of the Rings, and they're in most cases talking about like what ifs and filling in some of the gaps of the stories. And I really took a great interest in them. And then it reminded me, you know what, I haven't really spoken enough about the One Ring RPG, and so I wanted to start delving into this a little bit deeper, and I'm doing something that I've never done before. All right, I'm actually jumping right to the issue of the Canon and the Loremaster. So this is an actual section in the Loremaster section of the core rulebook, and I jumped to there because one of the issues I've always had with playing or running a Middle Earth role-playing game is that how do you avoid stepping on the canon and the lore of the world if you're adventuring during the same time period, particularly the Third Age of Middle Earth. So how do you avoid interfering with the set story? Because obviously there is a set story that is taking place. If you are running if you're running a fairly open world campaign and your player character group comes across Frodo Baggins, you can't actually have them kill Frodo Baggins before he completes his task, unless you're going to seriously break from the story of Lord of the Rings. And so it's always been, I think, an issue, and they tried to tackle that here to a certain extent, and I am going to disagree with them on some points. I think that there's a much easier way to do what they're doing. I'm also going to talk about an example of how the Lord of the Rings online game actually handled the very same situation, and how it did, in my opinion, a great job of it. So without further ado, let's start taking a look at, well, first I'm going to switch views here, and I'm going to talk a little bit here about, sorry about that, I just took a little break to sneeze. So first of all, this is the second edition core rule book that I will be focusing on. I did do a box opening of this here, which is the starter set, which really happy to have gotten that. And the Lord of the Rings YouTube channels that I'm going to direct you to take a look at, if this is kind of your thing, is Nerd of the Rings, In Deep Geek, and The Broken Sword. So these are the three that I've been following the most, and they really inspired me to actually take another look at the One Ring, and to potentially actually run a few sessions of the One Ring, either as one-shots or as a very limited campaign kind of thing, if I can manage to work around the conundrum of how to run a campaign that is either parallel or or completely removed, and that's the real question of the balance that you might have to do, and that way you don't step on the toes of the lore, or you break the canon of Middle Earth as a setting. So, without further ado, let's get to what Free League had put out in this section. And it's why I'm going to this first. And then I'll go and do future videos talking about the actual rules, mechanics, and so on and so forth. So here we go. So, and I am going to expand this so you can read along. I will double check to see that you are seeing the same thing I am. So, Canon and the Loremaster. Fans of the literary works of J.R.R. Tolkien have long debated the existence of a consistent canon, as described in The Hobbit, The Lord of the Rings, and later publications that firmly defines the world and the history of Middle-earth. This has often been cited as one of the major hurdles to role-playing in games set in Middle-earth, claiming, as it does, that the player heroes, adventurers, will interfere with the actions of the saga's known protagonists and break the canon's consistency. The quick and easy answer to such concerns is that there is no such thing as an established Tolkien canon, which I think is a wrong take. I do not agree with that. There is absolutely established canon in The Lord of the Rings. The protagonists and the antagonists and the, who is filling what role and what is the sequence of events as they occur are all set in canon. All right. So to say that it doesn't exist or it's never been established is, quite frankly, completely off. However, it is interesting to delve a little further into the subject because a lore master can learn a great deal from tackling this apparently insurmountable obstacle. All right, and in an unreliable narrator. All right, so this is one option. One of the ways a lore master can deal with the dilemma of altering facts perceived to be part of the Tolkien canon is to consider the information in the stories not as the words of an infallible, all-knowing narrator, but those of witnesses to the events, individuals who are subject to errors and personal bias. For example, The Hobbit relates the content of Bilbo Baggins's memoir. This literary device served Tolkien well as he strove to create a believable ancient history which included the inevitable inconsistencies that arise in a narrative composed by different chroniclers over time. And there is no reason why Loremaster cannot do the same, especially if there is a need to change an established date or the details behind a known fact or historical figure. To get an idea of how much the perspective of an unreliable narrator can distort perceptions and possibly facts, one need look no further than the books themselves. Readers of The Lord of the Rings often find it difficult to reconcile the image of Gimli, the redoubtable axe-wielding warrior of Erebor, with the dwarven companions of Bilbo in The Hobbit, who, captured by trolls, goblins, spiders, and wood elves, more often than not end up being saved by their hobbit burglar. I'm not quite sure how they're making the comparison here. Gimli's a different character, and so he is not comparable to any of the companions of Bilbo Baggins's group of dwarves. It's kind of weird that this is the point that they're looking at and saying, well, since Gimli was not exactly the same as these other dwarves, then you're breaking the canon of how dwarves behave. It's weird, and I think inaccurate. Filling in the blanks. So this is another potential thing that you can do. Tolkien wove a rich narrative tapestry composed of believable characters set against a vivid landscape and driven by motivations firmly grounded in myth and tradition. But even such an extensive and intricate chronicle does not thoroughly explore every nook and cranny of this imagined world and time period. Far from it, as a narrative focus of the books shift from one region to another, many locations and events related to them remain obscure and are only briefly touched upon. The filling in the blanks approach, which I think is the one that works best, based on the concept that the sagas are told from the subjective perspective of their protagonists who are not familiar with every corner of Middle-earth, gives every lore master the freedom to create their own stories. The setting material provided in the guide and in the various supplements for the game is an example of this. Many of the events occurring in the chosen time frame, the years covering the period from the discovery of the ring to its destruction, are briefly mentioned in source materials and therefore open for development and interpretation. It is all about the characters is a third possibility. Another interesting view on canon comes from the author himself. While certainly very protective of his own creations in general, J.R.R. Tolkien stressed several times that what was ultimately dear to him was the integrity of his characters, their motivations, more than the preservation of his plots or other elements. By applying this perspective to a game of the One Ring, it is clear that the game will remain true to the literary sources if the lore master pays due attention to the treatment of the canonical characters, and if the players strive to create and play plausible heroes. Last but not least, nowadays, a bulk of Tolkien's Middle-earth related publications give the impression of an immutable and consistent corpus. But when the author was alive, he was constantly rewriting and rearranging his own material, even making substantial changes to be inserted in new revised editions of his books. Some of these changes corrected inconsistencies, but more often than not, they were introduced to accommodate later plot changes and developments. For this reason, it is not unreasonable to assume that even Tolkien himself looked at his own work as being mutable. That even the chronologies he himself carefully created were to be considered provisional at best and not restricted to or bound by an established canon. Taking everything into consideration, a lore master should not feel intimidated by the source material. Rather, they should push ahead and add their own story threads to Professor Tolkien's wonderful and epic narrative tapestry. All right, so I find, and I'm going to switch views here. So I find that the best approach was that middle approach that was spoken about, and that particular approach really does mirror what the what Lord of the Rings Online actually accomplished. And so I'm going to show you that real quickly. Not the video game itself, but just the just like the content of it. I'm switching too many things here. Sorry. Um, so I have to go here and I have to just switch and change my window to this. All right. Um, so if you are not familiar with Lord of the Rings Online, Lord of the Rings Online has been a game on Steam that you could played, and this goes back a long, long time. I don't have the header here to show you when this game was first released, but it was quite some time ago. Let's look at the store page. Sorry. That might be the best. So it originally came out in 2012. All right, so that definitely. Oops, music. Stop it. So 2012. So this has been out for 10, 12 years. So 12 years ago, this game was initially put out, and what it does, is that it will give you a few glimpses of the Fellowship of the Ring and what they're doing at the same time that you are playing your character. You're running your character through the world, through Middle Earth, during the same time frame. And only on a few occasions do you kind of cross paths with them, but not directly. You might run into ring wraiths in one scene, and then it'll be weeks of gameplay where you don't come across any semblance of the main storyline of Lord of the Rings taking place. You are in that middle portion of what Free League was talking about. You're a story of adventurers in either in a different place or under different circumstances. And although the rest of the companions of the ring, their story is going on, at its own pace and occurrences, and your player party group are doing something that might be somewhat related to it, might even be enhancing it, or might be picking up the scraps of what was left behind in their carnage and and what they're turning over. So let's say like sometime after Moria is traversed, and the Balrog had come down and the mountain had collapsed after that epic battle between Gandalf and the Balrog. Where do all those orcs and goblins and everything go? Well, they will follow through those hidden halls and whatnot, and finally make their way to the surface, and that is where the players in your group can then encounter those groups of orcs or whatever that have left the Khazad-dûm and are ending into other places that weren't there in, or I should say Moria, that weren't in Moria originally. So that I think is an important thing for you to consider doing if you are running a Middle Earth campaign, is to have it in a totally different region but in the same timeline. Or what you can do, and I think that they would have been best off doing that, because it then totally avoids stepping on the toes of the canon, is to instead go with a time period that follows the ending of the Third Age. All right, so you pick up, in the earliest months of the Fourth Age, maybe even the after the scouring of the Shire, if you wished, and pick it up there. Pick it up where the War of the Ring is over, but there's still some residual things going on. There's, all of the orcs did not disappear. There are still trolls. There might still be, not ring wraiths, but there may still be some other ghosts or wraiths of other type, like the Barrow Wights and other things like that, where the player characters can still get involved with and basically run a campaign as they are either the cleanup crew or they're just trying to piece Middle Earth back together again, and still looking for other lost or hidden knowledge about about the previous ages that might once again rise up and create a new kind of a new antagonist to their experience as well. So it's very challenging, I know, and there are different ways, as Free League puts out, of kind of settling that. And I certainly know where I would take a new campaign set in there, and I certainly wouldn't take their first choice of saying, well, you can alter the canon to meet your gaming needs, and that's certainly fine. I'd rather either have it as a totally different area, and then you're just hearing the murmurings of what is going on with the main story, of the Middle Earth and the Third Age, or I would have it take place immediately following the end of the Third Age and the beginning of the Fourth Age, and that way there's no risk of stepping on the toes of the original canon timeline. So I'm going to leave it there for now. I hope you enjoyed this video. Please feel free to comment in the section. Definitely check out those other websites or other YouTube channels, because they have a whole slew of just incredible takes on things. Like I was really intrigued by the series of what if this person got the One Ring, and how things might have turned out that way, and so forth. So really good details in there, and certainly inspiring to make you want to, certainly for me, made me want to run something in in Middle Earth, or at least make my return back to Lord of the Rings Online and play it that way, because I think that game actually did cover it and cover that issue exceptionally well. So, as always, thanks for joining. As always, I like to, hope to see you on the gaming screen sometime soon. Perhaps playing in one of my one-shots, or, for the One Ring second edition, or in my regular games that I am running on a weekly basis, or at a gaming convention, which I'm really looking forward to meeting a lot of you. I know I'm going to be meeting several of my subscribers and several of the people that I know from YouTube. I will be meeting them in person for the first time, particularly in September, and then again in January. So really looking forward to those upcoming in-person conventions as well. So you all have a great one. Take care.